I think for a long time when I was growing up, I just had this kind of idea that like I just wasn't a dick. Like I just wasn't a dick, so I'm obviously not going to have sex with someone if they don't consent. But I suppose I hadn't been thinking about the fact that like sometimes it's not obvious at all, and that you can go away from it thinking it was a good time and you just didn't pick up on signs. But I think in my head, I just thought it will be really obvious if they don't consent. You know, they'll be going like, get off me or something, which is definitely, I think, not always the case. You should really be thinking, have I definitely got the green light here? And I think you should definitely just ask. My first girlfriend, we went out when I was 19 and we went out for about 5.5 years. And we studied together at university. So she was also like, didn't really know what she was doing, and I didn't really know what I was doing. You know, maybe like I just did something. I went to a certain position, you know, when we were having sex that, I don't know, maybe she didn't really want to do, and I didn't really ask her, or, you know, that kind of stuff. When I think back at those times now, I just think like there was no conversation. We didn't say anything. I just would like move her into another position or something, and there was no, I don't know, it didn't really feel maybe like there was any sort of consenting action there from her. But I think probably she maybe felt as if she couldn't say some stuff sometimes, because of the kind of, maybe because of the upbringing she had, maybe, you know, she didn't want to ruin the moment. I think that's like a big part of consent, maybe, is that like there's this idea that there's like a moment, or like that there's that you can ruin. And I hope that I haven't like you know, fucked her up somehow. I don't think she has with me, really, in that regard. I feel guilty about it, I suppose. But then I also feel like, I don't know, like it's so hard to scrutinize these things in the past, because you also aren't completely sure the memory of that situation was right. And I suppose it's probably not a great response to it, really, but like I sort of have to conclude when I think about that like, well, at the time it must have been okay, I guess. But you never know. But it's, you know, when you think back at those moments, having sex with someone like 5 years ago, it's like really hard to remember exactly what happened, you know. So, or even if it definitely did happen, like, you know, because all these times conflate together, you know, when you think about things in the past. So it's hard to think about those times in the past and be completely sure of it. In my kind of lifetime history of my sexual history, like I only have to think about consent with people that I know trust me to a certain extent already, and I trust now. And I suppose something that I've learned, I'm still learning, I suppose, but like I've learned from a long-term relationship, is that people can withdraw their consent even if you've been going out with them for 3 years. I think it, like, when you've just been with someone for so long and you're in love with them and they're in love with you, you just stop thinking about whether this person is consenting to having sex with you or not, because you just assume, well, they trust you or whatever. But actually, you know, you have to be, the more you know someone, the more aware you become of, you know, their body language and whether they're like into it. And yeah, I think you still have to be very sensitive to that. You know, there's definitely times where I'm having sex with my current fiance, and you know, you just have, there's just a part of you that goes, so that something isn't right here, and you know, you just have to say, are you okay? Is everything all right? And sometimes even for my fiance, she'll go like, you know what, it's actually not. Like, actually, she wasn't even thinking about it, but she needed someone to ask. She needs someone to ask her sometimes. Or I need to be asked sometimes by her. And you actually go like, no, actually, I don't think I really want to have sex right now. And that's okay. But I think that's something that you have to be constantly thinking about, and not just thinking like, oh, well, this is fine because, you know, we're in love. It's not just the simple case of that, of being attracted to each other and trusting each other. Sometimes it's like, just in that moment, you just don't want to do it. I think I'm a much more sensitive person now. and my brilliant fiance has definitely made me that. I think I was fairly sensitive before, but maybe I wasn't. Maybe I was just a little bit more of a lad and a little bit more like a little bit less considerate, I think. I don't think I was completely considerate. I think I thought about myself quite a lot in that relationship. And if you're thinking about yourself a lot, you probably like that is linked to sex. This is just my recollection of this, but I do feel as though in the UK anyway, like at the beginning of like the last decade, maybe 2011, 2012, or like before that, there wasn't really like much mainstream chat about feminism. It was kind of, I don't know, on TV and stuff, like you just would get away with like a complete lack of female representation, sexist jokes, like, and I imagine in everyday life it was horrible. I mean, it's probably still really bad, but then it sort of became a conversation again in the news and just generally, and that was when I sort of realized, oh, I'm a feminist. You have to like say that you are. Like you have to actually say you're a feminist. You can't just say like, oh, I don't know. Like I believe in equal opportunity and that's it. You have to like either be positively for it or you're like. So I guess that was when I started to think about consent properly in a much more like slippery way. And then I guess like the Me Too movement sort of started to happen, and lots of friends of mine came out saying, I'd been sexually assaulted when I was younger. But just before that, I had been thinking a lot about people and like parties that we'd go to when we were like 17, 18, and that did happen to girls, particularly like situations in parties when someone's asleep or they've passed out and a guy's gone into the room or whatever. Girls would tell us the next day and we wouldn't really do anything about it. Like we wouldn't they would be like, oh, that guy who was like kind of part of our friendship group did this thing. And we just kind of were like, that was a really horrible thing that he did. But we never really like questioned him, or we never like ostracized him for that, which we should have done. Whereas I hope nowadays like 18-year-olds are doing that, but maybe 10 years ago, like there just wasn't that same conversation. It's not really an excuse, really, is it? But I suppose we just didn't have we didn't realize that was what we should do. We thought just saying, oh, he's a dick was enough. A lot of the reaction I would probably have had is like, well, I guess I don't really know what happened. Even though this woman is like literally telling me what happened, I guess my reaction was when I was like 18 was probably like, well, I guess I wasn't there, so I can't really have an opinion on it. And I don't think it had ever been like a friend of mine who'd done these things, but like, acquaintances, people like that. One of the reasons people get away with non-consensual sex is that like the conversations are so awkward that you would have to have with someone, particularly like in Britain where we just cringe about everything. If a woman said like, would you mind having a word with this guy about that? I think I definitely would, because I'm okay with having awkward conversations now. Like I don't mind doing this interview, for example. Like I don't mind, but I think there's lots of people who wouldn't feel comfortable doing that, because in the same way, it's the same way in which guys don't check up on guys' mental health and stuff. They just don't want to have that fucking conversation. They don't want to be vulnerable. I think I'm lucky. I have some male friends who could ask me, "Is everything okay? I'm here to talk to you about it," and I wouldn't feel like they were being patronizing. But I think like a lot of men think that that's a very patronizing question, and it's a way of them showing that they're more in control than you are. My mental health's fine. In fact, it's so good that I'm asking you how yours is, and it feels to me like there is always like a power dynamic in conversations between two guys, which I just don't feel with when I have conversations with women. Is that an unconscious bias on my part? Because maybe do I feel like I just am in control when I'm having a conversation with a woman? I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But between men, there is always feels like there's a winner and a loser of a conversation, and to show weakness is you losing, I suppose. all the things that people usually talk about, like, you know, this idea of like being manly, or like, you know, these socially constructed ideas of what being a man, being male is, definitely weigh heavy on everything. If I was to confront a man after a woman told me that they'd been like inappropriate with them, the conversation that I would have with that man would be construed as if like I was attacking them and I was trying to win something, which isn't how it should be. It should just be like, I'm checking up on my pal because they've said this thing about it. I'm not fucking blaming you. I'm asking you to have a conversation with me about it. But because of the way that men, I guess, are brought up, and because of the way we're socialized, it instantly becomes like a provocation, or like I'm blaming you for this. What have you got to say for yourself? Which is not how it should be. It's never going to help. I don't know. If we just said at the very beginning of boys' lives, it's fine to be wrong, it's fine to concede, power dynamics would change in conversations, or maybe power dynamics would disappear, because they wouldn't feel like you've got anything to win or lose, I guess. I think if you have any doubt, like if a man has any doubt their male friend isn't okay, it's probably worth asking, are you okay? In the same way that if a man has any doubt that whoever they're having sex with isn't into it, it's probably just worth asking. It's never, ever... I mean, like, first time I've ever had to ask that in sex, you think it's going to be a big deal, but it's just not at all. You just go... You just look into their eyes and you say, are you okay? And it's fine. It doesn't feel like you're taking yourself out of the moment. You're... It's just part of the moment. It's completely fine.